No? Okay, hi. So this is kind of a neat thing we're going to do. My good friend Pat and Rachel Folk sent me a little text the other day, and Pat's had some illness issues, and she remembers back a time when I was baking bread and they were here and we would share food together and have wonderful fellowship time. And I think her daughter Rachel thought and Pat mentioned to her just a few days ago, wouldn't it be nice if we could make bread too? So she texted me and said, would you come over and do this? And I said, of course, I'll come over and bake with you. But in the meantime, how about if I make a video and share the process with you, kind of so you can refer to it. That way you can do it yourself too. We are entering into a process that is thousands and thousands of years old. Recent archaeological excavations have shown communities 14,000 years ago that baked bread, and they found the remains. There are special kind of scientists that study ancient people's foods. And so they found it. And what's really interesting is around this, bread baking is actually what caused, they believe, what caused nomadic tribes to settle into an area where there were grains that they could pick. And folks decided that they were going to cultivate them, so that made them establish towns and settlements. So, I mean, we're part of an incredible historical legacy of our people, persons. And where did this all begin, according to them? Well, in the Fertile Crescent. Remember from social studies in 5th grade? The Tigris and Euphrates, Egypt, papyrus. They made bread too. And actually, they produced it commercially. So we're going to do it. What we need, basically, all you would actually ever need is flour and water. If you wanted to capture natural yeasts, you would blend up some flour and water and let it sit, ferment. It would capture natural yeast. Take a little longer, like days, and you could do it that way, but we don't have to. We can, but we're going to do something that's very simple that you can do at home. So I like to use King Arthur flour. They use very high quality grains and mill them, and they're very fresh, and they give a great product. I'm going to use a combination of their unbleached bread flour and unbleached regular all-purpose. We're going to make some boules, French boules, round loaves that are delicious. Actually, you can make any shape, but that's what we're going to do. What do we begin with? 4 cups of, actually I don't measure anything but the water, pretty much. 4 cups of nice warm water, not hot. Hot, and you're going to kill, we're not using, oops, lost some crumbs there. We're not using natural yeasts out of the air. We're going to buy good old Red Star active dry yeast, which works very well. And I'm going to put in, say, 3. 1, 2, 3. So we've measured that. That's pretty good. Then we're going to do, well, you will have salt eventually, but not right now. So right now we're going to need just a little bit of sugar. I'm going to say 1, 2. Say 2 tablespoons, kind of like that. And we'll mix that around a little bit. What is it about the chemistry of yeast that it likes to stick to things? Maybe they can figure out a glue. Then we're going to take a little bit of flour. Now, we're using white. We're going to make very simple white today. You can use grain flour. You can use anything you want. But just to start us off, the most basic, the most simple. Let's open this nice bag and get flour all over the place. Ta-da. So I'm going to dump a little flour in. Start with 5 pounds, okay? You'll use most of it. Technically, if you were a professional baker, you would be weighing this, because measurements are not always accurate. So I put maybe, I'm going to say 2 cups, something like that. And I'm going to use my good old KitchenAid. You don't have to. If you don't have a KitchenAid, use the biggest bowl you have. Not plastic. Don't like plastic. Don't like aluminum. Stainless steel or glass is great. Mix that all up. and then go watch an episode of Days of Our Lives. See you in a few minutes.
Okay, go.
So here we are. We've waited about 10 minutes. Dick reminded me, he said, didn't they used to proof the yeast? And yes, we don't need to very much because we can look on the back of the yeast packet and see the fresh dates. And never buy old yeast. Always check the dates. Get as fresh as you can. You don't need to proof it to prove that it's active and alive because it's a living organism. So we know it is because you can look at there. And now this yeast is making gas. Now for humans that might not be such a good idea, but for yeast it's a perfect thing for them to do. And then the little bubbles are coming up and it's bubbling. It's had a little sugar to feast on in there. It's had some flour to feast on in there. If you were making like a sourdough, you would take this kind of a mix, set it in a crock, and feed it regularly until it got a nice sour, yeasty smell, and then you would make a sourdough. And you can do that, but we're not going to do that today. So here we are. We're at a point now where we can begin to add some of the other things. I don't like to add salt right onto the yeast. I think salt kind of might kill it a little bit. So I'm going to add flour. First, I'm going to add a little bit of more bread flour, just a little bit more, boom, ba-doom, 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 like that. Maybe a cup. And I'm going to add a cup of regular all-purpose. Makes a little more tender crumb. And it's all good, you know. If you don't have bread flour, you can use this. It's all good. I'm going to add a couple of slurps of a very good, you know, everything is about quality, isn't it? Organic extra virgin olive oil. Has a beautiful fruity bouquet that works very well with the yeast. Boom. 2 good slurps. Perfect. You can add more if you want a more Italian bread. Now I shall add salt. And without salt, it's not great. With too much salt, I don't like it. I think commercial bread uses too much salt, but not me. So I'm going to use, like, say, 2 nice tablespoons for this amount. Put that aside. Now, you notice here that this KitchenAid mixer, which you don't have to have. You can do this with a heavy-duty wire whip, and then when it gets too stiff for that, use a wooden spoon. But I'm lazy. I have arthritis in my hands, so this works for me. Dough hook, whip, and that's just a plain old beater. I do this because somehow this dough hook, the dough swirls up and gets caught in the stove. I have changed my mind and I use this. This works fine too, but I like this better. So I'm gonna hook this up here and give it a very low. Oh, I think I'm gonna plug it in first. How about that? That would help. Now we go, but low. And you see the foaming of these. Oh, that's a lovely smell. If you tasted that, it's disgusting. It's amazing that something that tastes so horrific bakes into something so amazing. The application of heat. So let's give it a little bit of whip here. So it looks very creamy and smooth. We've got a nice mix. We're using the wire whip. Build those, what are these muscles? What are these muscles called that you use for a wire whip? I don't know what they're called. Whatever. I don't have any, so you would be like whipping and whipping. My grandmother did this by hand because she had neither whip nor mixer, nor, if I recall, did she have electricity. So it was this. All right, so now we have a nice creamy looking thing. Let's add, I go by slurp, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. I think that's from Fiddler on the Roof. Back on very slowly. If I make this go fast, I have a volcanic cloud of flour. So, it's starting to come that's what they're called. Very strong biceps to make this dough come together. Work it until it's creamy. Okay, I think we're good. Let's add a little bit more of this. Another cup or so. In the beginning stages like this, we can be generous with flour, but never too much, because you can make a decent loaf of bread if the dough is wet. If it's dry, it's destroyed. You see how it's starting to separate again? Now, into a very, very soft dough. When it starts to pull away a bit, then we'll do the next thing, which is empty it out on the counter to knead. This is the fun part. You see I'm adding really basically tablespoon by tablespoon. Okay. Turn this off. Yeah, it's good and messy. So now let's see what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay down because a goodly amount, like say, no, not that goodly amount, not even a half a cup maybe, like this, so that my thing doesn't stick. I'm going to remove this. This is a hands-on thing. Don't wear rings. Make sure your hands are scrupulously clean. Make sure your counter work surface is scrupulously clean. Flour up your hands, otherwise you're going to stick to everything. Now, I'm going to do this wetter than I normally would, because you might not have a KitchenAid to get you, because this dough is really heavy. If you use like a little portable mixer, you'll burn up the motor. So we don't want that to happen. Okay, there we go. All right. Get it all off. Now, let's get this out here. I think I'll use a nice strong spatula, which I will flour a bit. Get this all out of here. Now, you know, the funny thing with flour, when it sits, this is the reason you don't want to add too much initially. When it sits in a wet thing, it absorbs. You ever notice with pancake batter, it seems runny at first, but when it sits a while, it actually thickens up. Gravy does too. Same principle. We don't want to add too much flour too soon. And the reason I'm not really measuring this is because today's a really humid day, so my flour probably has a little more moisture content than it would if I lived in a dry zone of Arizona or something like that. So get this whole thing all out of here, much as I can. Yeah, it does it. And if a little bit's left in here, no harm. All right, now we have our blob of dough here. It's wet. Let's move this out of the way. So I begin to gather it together. I'm going to put up a little extra flour there as I need it, okay? Make sure I get any little pieces off of my hand so I can work and make a good, clean protein coat on this. Ah, yes, it's nice, it's soft, supple, and moist. So we can begin adding small, incorporating by kneading here, small amounts. Press with the heel, press forward, turn, press forward. You can use both. Like that. Turn. Don't put all that flour in. Might not even use that, you know. Here. Look at that. Even just in a few minutes, that wetness has disappeared because the flour is being absorbed into that liquid. So just a little bit. Yeah, see, it's sticking still to my hand, so I'm going to go like this is how I do it. I just flour my hands rather than dumping a whole ton of flour on there. And let's go. This is good for, I don't know what muscles, hopefully for those, but I don't know. After a certain age, even that doesn't work anymore. My husband's back there laughing his head off. They used to say only your hairdresser knows the truth, but it's actually only your husband knows the truth about things. All right. This is coming along very, very nicely. Still a little wet. Oh, it smells so good. Right now, if you had a taste of this, it'd be disgusting. But we'll see the miracle, the magic happen now when we apply heat. So we're going to knead this until the dough is supple, and I can do like a few of these rotations without feeling wet. As you'll see, I'm only adding flour to my hands. Which is a little more tedious, but a whole lot safer, because the last thing you want are big flour blobs in this. So I wish you could feel this. That would be the best way to know. So, you know, when you do this, don't worry about measuring the count of flour. Just have 2 nice bags there. They'll keep. And you can do this the next time. Now this makes a lot of bread actually. Some recipes have one lousy loaf. I think it's a lot of work to do for just one loaf. If you're going to do this mess and this work, I mean, can you imagine trying to knead a softball size thing? This is way more toothsome. You can actually get into it. So yes, so we are now one with women since the dawn of time. I love that feeling, and I'm really getting into it. Ta-da-dum! Okay, keep working. I hope you're doing this along with me, because this is in real time, and I think it's important to know how things are, some things are in real time. Look, I'm going to be really happy with this in just a moment or so, I think. I'd end up using all of this flour. How about that? Just a light coat again. No blobs. Everything that's on your counter, use it up. Now, what this is doing, and I hate to even use the word gluten because everybody's got this gluten phobia these days. It's amazing that the human race survived this long. You know, my opinion with the gluten thing is when people have started tampering with natural grains, they messed something up which has made us sick. Because in my childhood, my mother's, my grandmother's, nobody had bread was like truly the staff of life. One of the stories I can tell you was my parents, as you know, most of you who are my friends know, I'm an immigrant kid, and my parents were both in Nazi prison camps. And my dad talks about those years of hunger, deprivation, things I can't think about right now. And he said the one thing he would dream about, he was so hungry, he'd cover himself up with whatever thin blanket he had or rag. He would dream about putting a piece of bread in his mouth. So I'm going to cry. I'm not going to cry. And So this is a sacred thing for me and for my family. And for my entire childhood, Mother baked, of course. And at our meal, the bread was always there. We didn't eat a lot of it because it was like, oh, Mommy baked bread again, whoopee. But Daddy reverenced that. First of all, he reverenced the fact that her hands made it, but the other fact that he now had on his table a whole loaf of bread, never mind just one dry piece. And so he would take the knife before he was the one who cut that. He would make the sign of the cross on the crust on the back of that bread, and then it was cut. And Mommy would never cut the first loaf of bread without Daddy having done that. So this is important to me. So anyway, I think we're good. This is gorgeous. Look at this. Bouncy, vibrant, elastic, fragrant. I love it. Let me take, I know it's got all kind of crusties, but don't worry, that won't hurt a thing. And because I'm not a lover of doing a million dishes, I suppose you can make this all shiny new, but this works. Take, put a couple, I don't know, maybe a tablespoon and a half, that looks like, in there. Take this nice piece of dough that we have here, put it in, roll it around so we coat the entire thing with the olive oil. And here it is, beautiful. This is now going to take a nap. Now it's kind of warm in here, humid, warm, perfect. And I'm going to put this in a non-chilly spot, which is on my stove. I have a gas stove, so there's always kind of like the pilot in there, that kind of in that little space has an absolutely wonderful atmosphere for rising. So don't put it by an open cold window or by your air conditioning vent or anything like that in front of a fan. That's a no-no. Put it in a cozy spot where in the wintertime you'd like to settle down and have a cup of tea, or in my case, coffee. So, all right, I will see you later. I'm going to cover this with a moist French, actually this is French. I'm going to put this serviette on top. I'm going to sprinkle some water on that to retain moisture, and I'm going to forget about it for a while. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, you see this gadget I have here is the bench scraper. You don't have to use it. If you have a straight edge spatula, you can, and I already did this, clean off your counter, get all your little grits, scoop it off, throw them away so that your counter is nice and clean and smooth. Let's see what we have, shall we? Ta-da! Look at that. Is that ever gorgeous? This stayed nice and moist. This is nice and moist. The gases in the yeast have caused this to bloom. So I have this. I have a little flour, which I'm going to use so we don't stick to the counter. And I have this, which I got at Echo Hill Country Store. Folks around here know about that. It's a wonderful Amish-run store that has, you can buy your flour. You can buy this in bulk quantities, which I have. So this is Durham Semolina flour #1. It's a very fine product, as you can see. It's very nice. So that's what I coat my pan with. Now I have a Gigunda Monster stove, so you may have to use 2 sheets, you know, like in a normal conventional stove, and that's fine. And I coat the bottom with this. Some people use cornmeal. It's gritty a little bit, and this is a little finer, doesn't burn as easily. So you have to go like this with your hand and kind of pretend you're an ancient woman or man and you're sowing seeds in your field. It's all kind of historic, isn't it? There we go. Nice, okay? We coated. Now, this keeps a long time in a cool, dark place in a freezer, well sealed. Ta-da, done. What shapes? So this dough, my gosh, you can make a boule, you can make baguette, you can make bâtard, you can make les petits pains, little rolls, crusty rolls. You can make pizza. So if you make pizza though, and focaccia, things like that, press it down deflate it gently by turning it in on itself. Oh, I think I need a little bit of farine. Voila, like this. Oh, let me get rid of that. And go like this. Separate it gently from the side. Turn it in on itself so we don't lose any of the gas. You see what I'm doing? Like this. So it's deflated but not lost. Those wonderful gas bubbles are what's going to allow it to bloom again. So voila, now we get to do the dishes. All right, let's set them aside. So I'm going to use my bench cutter to divide the dough into, I'm going to make 2 boules, just to be very, very simple, okay? So I'm going to see how nicely this cuts. Am I in half? Yeah, not like that. Ooh, missed. Whack that thing. Put a little flour down. Now, if you want to save half of this for pizza for tomorrow, flour it nicely. That. Put it in a plastic bag and chill it. And you have to check it from time to time because even in the refrigerator, it will grow and blow that bag to smithereens, so that you can gently fold it back in on itself. And by the time it really chills down, it will stay this size. So we have also this piece, which we will fold in on itself. So what we have here on the outside is a protein coat, which has to form in order for the gas not to escape while this is rising. So I know that looks like it might just be ready to go, but I'm gonna actually work it just a little bit more to tighten up the gluten, that good word, that's really okay if you go like this. Back in the olden days when women had long hair and wore these, atrocious hairstyles with curls, we would roll our hair like this and make these bubble things along the side, in the back, so it's kind of like that action. This tightens it up pretty nicely. If I had une couche, which I don't have, a lot of tools I don't have, but they're dreams to get. It's like a rising basket. I would put it in with this bottom side. And you notice while I'm doing this, I'm not breaking through the protein coat because I don't want any of the gas bubbles to escape. Yeah, I just did it. Okay, here we go. Come on, baby. Work for me here. And I'd put it in like that. It would help it rise, and I'd flip it over and bake it. But we're going to do this free form, so it might not be as high. Okay, so here we go. Isn't this nice? Beautiful, round, firm, lovely thing. And I'm going to set it right down on the semolina. We do the same thing with boule number 2. Curl it in on itself. I don't know if this is correct. This is just what I do. So you can read, listen, any good cookbook has got recipes. You can find excellent recipes anywhere you go. Any cookbook, online, anywhere. A bread book will have brilliant things and great ideas. This is just how I do it, and it works for me. So if it works, it works. Okay, so we're good. We have a nice, firm, round, pretty thing. There. Now, I'm going to sprinkle it with flour. And this is simply for looks, nothing else. I'm going to be fairly generous with it. Then I'm going to run over real quick and get a sharp knife. And I'm going to make little cuts in it. So when you make the cuts in here, actually that's what makes the design. The flour doesn't get into those cuts. So I'm going to go like this and like this. And like this, like this. And that's the other thing. Make sure your knives are sharp. It's really hard to cook if your tools are not, you know, one good knife. And actually, these wonderful, wonderful knives, I have to credit. This is the Wüsthof knives. And if you've heard of them, they're German. They're fantastic. And I have to credit Rachel and Pat for gifting me with a wonderful set. Maybe 15, 20 years ago. It's been that long. Yikes. And I use them. I will use them all my life. I'll pass them on to my kids. That's the quality of cutlery. So now I'm going to take, so thank you girls so much. And thank you to Megan and Lauren, who kind of tweaked me pretty hard yesterday to do this because I was shy. But it's so fun. So I hope you do this, okay? And now this is going to rise, but it's not long. So actually for all this lovely jam that we have there, it's going to be absolutely glorious. And these two beautiful breads that will grow quite sizably. Actually hands-on work, what would you say, 45 minutes? No more. The rest is just hanging around waiting, washing a few dishes. And you can do your other things that you have to do in the morning. I didn't start till, 10, 11, something like that. And I'm going to teach my students starting at 2, and this will all be done. And so I hope you do it. It's so fun. Okay, we'll talk to you in a little bit when this has risen, and then we'll be ready to put them in a nice preheated oven. Okay. Yeah? Well, I think we've waited about 20, 25 minutes. Our dough was covered with a moist tea towel. So, holy moly, look at those babies. Shake, shake, shake a little bit, and I think we're going to pop them into a preheated 425 oven. Now, if you didn't want to put your bread directly on a pan, you can use a baking sheet or parchment paper, whatever, but I think I get a nicer crust on the bottom if it's directly on the middle. So here we go. My hot oven is there. And carefully, carefully, carefully put those in. So how long, you may ask? I don't know, 25, 30 minutes, something like that. Let your nose be your judge. It's just like cooking the jam, baking the bread. You have to know your oven, your stove, how much heat it puts out. So use your eyes and your nose and your sense of touch whenever you make a determination. Don't go strictly by those numbers. They may vary for you and for me. So access all our senses when we determine the doneness or the readiness of a product that we cook or bake. So, okay, we're going to wait. I'm setting up my afternoon schedule here, texting a few people. So in about 25 minutes, we'll take a peek and see. Oh, and one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some water in there to make some steam. Makes for a nice crust too. So you can do that too. Use a spray bottle and spray. Okay, and toodaloo. It's been about a half hour. My oven bakes a little unevenly, so about halfway through the process, I took the pan out, turned it around, so I would have an even browning, and I like my bread kind of brown. Some people don't, but I think it gives a little finer crumb. So there we have it, and in the meantime, twice I added a little spritz of water into the oven, so it makes, as you can see, a nice firm crust. Pull this baby out, close the door, and turn that off. And it's beautiful on this side, beautiful on that side. This will make a beautiful, crusty, crunchy loaf. And because of our little flower thing and our cutting pattern, we've made a little diamond on top. This gorgeous, gorgeous bottom crust here. And of course, as I said, you can make these breads in any shape. So we're going to let this bread cool a bit because it's just too fresh to cut, although I'm tempted to have a little crusty piece. But we'll have it in a little bit. We'll put out some nice cheese, maybe some figs, a little glass of wine, some jam, some butter, whatever you like. And we'll try it. So let's let it cool for about a half an hour and then we'll be back and give it a try. So, these things are still not cold, but cooler so that we can maybe cut one to see what's happening inside our beautiful loaves. I wrapped the jellies, saran wrap on top. They're going to go in the freezer and they'll be great when we take them out. I just want you to see that we didn't need pectin. If you look, this has firmed up beautifully. It's just a great, great consistency. Okay, it's so nice. Got a little butter here, my good knife, and this beautiful cutting board, gift from my grandson Gabriel. So let's cut on the, I call this the umbilical cord side, what it usually glues to the other loaf. So here we go. Now, today was a humid day, very humid outside and inside. So my crispy crust has kind of gone by the wayside. The bottom is still quite firm. But that's just a function of the weather. Not much we can do about it. But so here we go. Need a good, sharp, serrated knife to cut this. And let's see what we have on the inside. Oh, beautiful. Isn't that lovely? I can't tell you how good the house smells. So let's taste it and see if it, tastes as good as it looks. So we'll spread a little bit of nice sweet butter on here, a little bit. And let's put on some of our wonderful stone fruit jam. That's kind of nice. If you want to reheat this at some time, you can cut this in smaller pieces, freeze it, leave it big, make paninis with. Don't microwave bread, it just turns to concrete. I don't know what the chemistry or the physics are, but that's what happens. Wrap it in foil and put it in the oven a little bit, or toast it. It's great toasted. So let's see. Oh gosh. Come here, Dad.
Cameraman's turn.
What do you think?
Delicious. Perfect.
Yeah, it's really pretty spectacular.
Delicious, nutritious.
Yeah.
Makes me feel ambitious.
That's Uncle Jimmy. Always says that. My dear friends, I hope you do this. In a little while, my first student of the day is Sydney Kuzik. Her mom and dad have been tremendous in helping us do this, figuring what camera to buy, telling my husband what to do, how to do it, and they're just beloved friends, so I'm going to get to share this with them when they get here. So I wish you all a great day. Bon appetit. Call me, text me, email me if you have any questions. If it doesn't work, it should work. And happy cooking.